Welcome to the Vada podcast, Ep.6, Studio Confessions. With me today, I have a man who wears many hats, physically and figuratively. Guitarist in Skindred, producer, songwriter, and co-owner of Redbeard Guitar Effects. Please welcome Mr. Mikey Demus.
Woo! That's me!
In the building.
In the house.
It's been a pretty special week for you. I must congratulate you, first of all, on winning a Mobo.
Thank you. Unbelievable.
It's been quite a year all in all.
It's been a great year. I can't lie. We've won awards. We won a heavy music award last year for Best Live Band. We just won a Mobo for Best Alternative Act. Our record went to number 2 at the end of last year in the UK album charts. Should have been number 1, but we'll get into that. No, we won't get into that. It's fine. Just done a really successful tour at the end of last year in UK and Europe. I'm about to play Wembley Arena next month. And then I'm off to Australia and the United States immediately after that. It's going all right.
Not too shabby. And you headlined Download last year.
Yeah, we headlined the second stage.
It's funny how you can kind of forget that because there's all the other good stuff that's been going on.
My goodness.
But It's not come overnight. How long have you been in the band now?
We are a 22-year overnight success.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, I've been in the band for about 22 years. I think I joined in about 2002.
Right.
My memory's hazy, but it's like 2002, end of 2002, I think. It was around my birthday. So around my birthday is always a good reminder of like how long I've been doing.
How long you've been in
that thing. But yeah, and it's amazing how long it feels like, but how quickly it's gone as well. Mm. It's been a lifetime, my whole adult life really, but it feels like I've just got started, and it's all just go all the time. It's a crazy way to spend your life.
Yeah, I can
in the best
imagine.
possible way.
Yeah, the opportunities that you've had over the years, second to none, really. You can only kind of get that with being in a band, I think.
Yeah, you've got to do it to kind of to know what it's about. I suppose that sounds really, really obvious, but it's hard. It's hard to know what it's like unless you've walked that path to some degree. I think it's a funny old game.
So, was Skindred the first time you went into a studio, or did you have life before that?
I did have life before that. I was, working a series of jobs as a younger man, but I've been in bands one way or another since I was about 14 years old, I think. Mm-hmm. I started playing guitar when I was about 11. My dad sort of tried to encourage me to pick it up before that, but I showed no interest because I just wasn't interested. It was too hard. I wasn't really into things that I wasn't good at straight away. So for some reason, about 11, I just went, do you know what? I want to pick up an instrument. I want to learn an instrument. I want to learn the guitar. I think I saw the Jimi Hendrix sort of at Woodstock kind of. It was Woodstock, I think. Yeah, the film of that I'd seen, and I was like, oh my God. For some reason, it just spoke to me like live music, iconic artists, and like very guitar-y kind of thing. You had like 10 Years After and Santana and Jimi Hendrix and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff just made me go, wow. And so I picked up a guitar at about 11 and I became really obsessed with it. And my dad lent me a guitar that I'd sort of learned on. He was lefty. He's a left-handed guitarist, which is why I'm a left-handed guitarist. Factoid. I'm actually right-handed.
So that's the only reason you're a left-handed guitarist?
Yeah, both my parents were lefties, and I just learned on my dad's guitar, and I had no idea it was the other way around. It was just a guitar, and no one stopped me, and no one corrected me. So here we are, all these years later. That's just how it goes. So anyway, I locked myself in a room every day and forced myself to like figure stuff out on guitar, and then when I was at school, sort of, high school, I guess, about 14, 15, I was compelled to want to meet other people and play music with other people.
It's a massive social thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I was really finding my identity with that. And I stumbled across people. I was introduced to people like, oh, you should meet so and so. They play the drums.
Yeah.
Around the corner from me, where I grew up, was this kid who was a couple of years younger than me, which is massive at the time. I was like 14, 15, and he was like 12.
Yeah.
And he absolutely shredded on drums. And so I'd go around to his and we'd play in his garage, and we'd play along to, we'd have like headphone setups of listening to like Green Day. Like we could play all the way through Dookie and stuff like that. And it was horrible. Yeah. And he had like mats on all his drums, like mats from like an entrance, like industrial, like like welcome mats that he'd cut up and make into drums and cymbals and stuff. And we just like maul away through songs like that, like Nirvana and Foo Fighters, Nirvana, Green Day and stuff like that, and just punk rock kind of thing. And that was my good friend to this day, Steve Durham, who actually plays drums for Louis Tomlinson now. Which is so cool, because he and I and a few other people are like people who made it out of our rinky-dink tiny little hometown to go off and do amazing stuff, you know.
That's really cool.
In his garage as kids, children.
How long did that band last?
We started a band with another couple of guys called that band was called Gibbon. That was my first band, was called Gibbon. Yeah. We were called Yellow Snow for a minute. And then someone went, "This is a terrible name, we've got to change it." We're like, yeah, good idea. How about Gibbon? Yeah, brilliant. That was it was covers and a few originals. It was kind of like whatever, But it was there's some footage out there somewhere of me
Of Gibbon?
somewhere. Yeah, I think Steve might have it actually.
Live?
Yeah,
Gibbon live?
yeah.
So did Gibbon get into the studio?
Gibbon didn't.
Oh.
But after that, this was like towards the end of the 90s was when I sort of discovered, mid 90s to late 90s, I sort of discovered alternative music a bit more, because I'd grown up listening to my dad's music, really. Mm-hmm. Rock and roll, punk rock, 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, that kind of thing. And it was great. And I love all that, Chuck Berry, Elvis Costello, Rolling Stones, the Beatles. Oh my God, all of it, in the car all the time, just knowing the songs just in your head. And that was huge. And I still got that in my DNA.
Yeah, that's a huge contributory factor in any songwriter.
Right.
The encyclopedia of music that they will build up over their years.
Yeah. And then, when you sort of are coming of age, you discover your own stuff, and being exposed to like all that American alternative guitar music, like Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine and, Nirvana and all that stuff in the 90s was so huge. And just, detuning the guitar a little bit, distorting it a bit more, and going, oh my God, this is aggressive and rebellious, and going down that road. And then I started a band with my sister actually, and a friend of mine who had met at college who played drums, pieced this band together, and that band was called Stuffer.
Okay, better than Gibbon.
Slightly better than Gibbon, which is the name of Harry Hill's cat. His hand puppet.
Okay.
Cat Stuffer the cat. Yeah. And Stuffer recorded. This is I've made a very long route round to this. I apologise. I will talk a lot.
Right.
I'll talk a lot. You're going to get a big episode. And Stuffer recorded their EP at Warehouse Studios in Oxford.
Okay.
I sort of grew up just outside Oxford, and I moved to Reading when I was sort of 16-ish. And so I was always going to gigs, and, in the Oxford live scene, and like Reading didn't really have a live music scene, really. Not really. They had a couple of venues, but no real bands.
It's the Riverside in Reading, isn't it?
The Riverside, Rivermead.
Yeah.
Is kind of a venue in Reading where, bands would play. There was the Hexagon Theatre as well.
Yeah.
Alley Cat, which was the Purple Turtle, all these little hole-in-the-wall venues.
I knew the Rivermead because when I was a kid and you'd go to Reading, there was always some kind of like...
Rivermead is where Reading is.
Yeah, it was like right
on like a leisure centre almost.
On the car park of Reading.
Yeah.
And there was always some alternative disco club night there, which I never went to.
Yeah.
Because I just thought, well, I paid to come to Reading, and that's better than a club, being in a club. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've seen a few bands at Rivermead over the years, Alley Cat was a smaller venue. You know, a few places where you could see bands, but Oxford was where it was really happening. You know, the Academy was called the Zodiac before it was the Academy.
Yeah, I remember the Zodiac. I used to go and see bands when it was the Zodiac there.
Right. And there was a club that my good friend of mine put on, like an alternative night called the Club That Cannot Be Named. And that's where we got the chance to play in front of, you know, other people. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like heavier music. Do you know what I mean? Like alternative and heavy music at the time. And we were in this sort of like new metal heyday, sort of staring down this new metal thing, just because that's what we were soaking up, really. Mm. We were, you know, inspired by a lot of 90s stuff, but also stuff that was happening right then and there.
What sort of year was that?
I guess like 98, 99, right before
before it kicked off with Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Just before that, you know, and
Korn.
Yeah, all those bands became a big influence, you know, of like the detuned thing and the heavy thing. Just as like, I was really late to metal. I didn't grow up with metal at all. And so my entry point to like heavier music was more that stuff than classic metal beforehand. I mean, my dad like was into Motorhead and Deep Purple and stuff like that.
Yeah, rock, but not
right. But metal like wasn't really in my world until I moved away from all that, and you know, before I moved away from home. And so my entry point was kind of like you say, like stuff like Korn and things like that, which were like and Pantera and things, which were like newer at the time, you know, more modern. And long story short, that band. We played loads of gigs, and we knew that we had loads of songs and we wanted to go and record. So we went to record like an EP at Warehouse Studios in Oxford, just outside Oxford. And that was, I looked it up actually the other day. It's still there. It's still the thing, but it's kind of a rehearsal studio too. It was a rehearsal studio then, and it's a rehearsal studio now, but they also have this recording facility. And it's kind of like carpety walls, like the classic kind of... quite student-y feeling rehearsal space. Very 90s, you know, bright coloured like carpet on the wall and stuff. And the recording studio, I think, if memory serves, was like an Atari console.
The O2, O1, Atari O1?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because at the time I was just a guitar player. I didn't have any interest really in learning that stuff. The recording side of things. I would soak it up and be like, see the names of things and wonder what things did and what their purpose was. So I was witness to a lot of knob twiddling and that kind of thing. But I wasn't like, all I was worried about was just doing a good job as a guitar player and a band mate, you know, doing good performance, that kind of thing. It was kind of daunting.
Yeah.
It was the first time we'd ever played to a click, anything like that. And, you know, my drummer was like, well, some songs we couldn't do to a click because it was just like, this is impossible.
Yeah.
We only have a certain amount of time. We are awful. We suck. We've just got to do it live.
I think that's a rite of passage. I think every musician needs to humiliate themselves in a studio when they're really young and have a really bad day. And then they walk away and go, I got to learn to play tight to click.
Yeah. I don't know if people have that so much now because of just the nature of softwares are maybe more forgiving. But I feel like it's a bit boomerish, but that Dave Grohl meme that gets handed around of like, you've got to get in a garage and just suck and be awful. I think there is something in that. That's really character building. Yeah, massively. Being in the back of a van or a car, being the local opener and sucking and playing in front of your friends and no one else, and it being pretty crap. Not even that, just the sound guy. And the bar staff. Yeah, I've done a lot of that. Everybody has to do that. I've done a lot of that. So, like, who was the first producer that you actually worked with? When I joined Skindred in about 2002, the band had already made a record in the States, and the band had this trajectory where they'd recorded an album at great expense on a major, and then it got released, and then a month later, the band was dropped because. Just the nature of the time of the change of guard in labels. Labels were in free fall and just people getting fired and moving on and you know, just the profit and loss sheet was just like, these guys are gone. These people, you know, the band was one of those ones that got struck off. So two guys in the band left and I got a phone call saying, do you want to come and try out for this band because a friend of mine was a friend of Dan, the bass player in the band, and I got the call saying, "Do you want to come try out?" I was like, "Absolutely, yes." I'd met Dan a couple of times, and we'd hung out. We were pals, and that was my shot.
Yeah.
So I jumped at the opportunity. The deal was, the band was looking at a record deal, and to re-release this first record. And we were going to go and tour the hell out of it, basically. I was like, yeah, sign me up. Absolutely sign me up. I was working a really decent job at the time, and I had all kinds of good stuff going for me, and I just packed it all in. I had a nice place to live in central Oxford. I was working a decent job, and I packed it all in to go and live on someone's sofa in Newport.
Nice.
For the foreseeable future, which I did.
It worked out okay.
I mean, it was a big gamble. It wasn't a very popular decision with my parents and so on. But I just was like, I've got to do this.
You should have blamed your father. It's his fault. He's the one that put a guitar in your hand.
I know, right?
So, yeah.
It's his fault. Anyway, sorry, I'm making a long way around to answering these questions. Basically, when I joined the band, we all knew that we wanted to write and create the next thing that the band was going to do. And so,
as a new boy, were they open to that straight away for you to be a writing force?
Yeah, I think because the band had no money, there was nothing going on in that regard. Basically, I was made a member of the band more or less straight away, and I inherited, all the debt and all the problems and all the stuff that needed sorting out. There was no money going around or anything, so there was no like hired gun situation because they didn't have any money.
Yeah, right.
So it was like the incentive was to do it, was to be part of it and be cut into all that stuff. And I think those two guys, Benji and Dan, were confident that they could do enough of that stuff themselves. So my input, my drummer Aria's input would they probably would have see how it went. I think the main thing was, I think I got the job because of my personality and my ability to play. I was a passable enough guitarist, and we got on well. And I think that's all it takes sometimes to be a workable band member, is to be a decent person and hold it down enough where there's room for growth.
Yeah.
I don't believe in you've got to be a virtuoso or super accomplished or technical in it. I mean, I know loads of people who can do enough to hold it together. I would put myself more in that category than like I'm smashing it on guitar or anything. No, not at all. Like I was, I play okay, and that's enough for me. But second record, basically the first time I got in the room with a proper producer, so to speak. I'd done stuff before in the past where, like people who own studios but real production, as we know it. Yeah. The first time I properly got to work with a proper producer was Matt Squire, who produced Roots Rock Riot, which was our second record. It didn't feel like an unfamiliar thing because I had been in the room with someone else in the chair calling the shots or giving direction, so to speak. Okay. But in terms of like a creative endeavor, when this person has more responsibility and you're looking to them for that, they are there because of that. You're looking to bring their experience, their opinion, their tastes, their decision making, their overall vision or their ability to share a vision, if you like, and to execute it. That's why that person's there. And I guess that was the first proper time I could say I was exposed to that. And to be honest with you, the first 10 years of my time being a professional, if you like, I consider myself very professional. I'm a band guy. I'm in a band. The first 10 years of me being in this band, I was in America. It was in the States almost entirely. And so I was exposed to American producers, American studios, American working practices, and so on and so forth.
Which is very, very different.
Very, very different. And so I was sort of, my baptism of fire, if you like, was being in that environment, which is kind of huge. And I didn't really think any different at the time because I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
But now reflecting, it's like, wow, this Welsh reggae metal band was expected to just get it together in America with Americans, and make it all work. And that's looking back, that's like, wow, it's crazy, really. It's a crazy cocktail of stuff that comes out of it. working with Matt Squire. He'd just done the big Panic at the Disco record.
Yeah, right.
That's why he was on our radar, really. We were given, we were on a major at the time. We were on Atlantic Records. And we were given this sort of short list of like, we had our wish list of people we wanted to talk to. And then we were, we had other people we who were on the menu, if you like. These are people you could work with. The funniest bit was when we had a conversation with Bob Rock.
Right.
We were crowded round my little Nokia 3210 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Little pay-as-you-go Nokia in our rehearsal space. We're on a call with Bob Rock on speakerphone, and he was literally in his car driving through Hawaii. And we're talking about, we should work together. We're like, because it's the label has put this together.
Yeah.
Like, this is a thing that's going to happen. And he was making it. In the end, it didn't pan out because his scheduling wise, he was making a record for Simple Plan, and that went on and on and on and on. It was a massive record for them, but we missed out on the opportunity to work with Bob Rock because his schedule wouldn't allow. And that was like, oh my god! But that was going to happen. That was going to be a thing that happened for us, and it didn't pan out. We ended up making the record with Matt Squire, which was amazing, absolutely amazing. Matt came out of post-rock, punk rock, American kind of vibe. He'd been a band guy. He was a guitar player, could play drums too. He was like a song guy. And he'd gotten into production. And he was only a little bit older than us. He wasn't like it wasn't a much older
Godfather
guy.
figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I've been around. He was like figuring it out, same as us. But it was very of the time in the US, like mid 2000s. He was up there, he was a guy to be in a room with.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to do more amazing stuff ever since.
So, at what point? I mean, you said earlier on that you did spend a time going into studios, going like, okay, it's interesting, but it's like that's not my job. I'm going to keep my head down and look after my shit. What point did you start getting into the whole learning about engineering, being able to work something like Pro Tools or Logic or whatever?
So it was actually before being unleashed in the studio proper that I'd actually been forced into, not forced, but you just have to get involved, because when I joined Skindred, like I said, they'd done a record in America, and we were back in the UK, and we knew we needed to demo, and we needed to write and demo and make that. We were just hungry to write more stuff, and the only really means to do that was we decided we were going to buy a rig, buy a recording rig.
What was it?
It was a Mac, like an iMac or whatever, like one of the, I want to say it wasn't one of the colourful,
like the clear.
No, we had a tower, and it was a colourful tower.
Yeah.
So it was
with like a yellow or an orange Apple.
Yeah, like a blue. We had a blue one.
Yeah.
Like the translucently blue one, but it was the tower.
Yeah.
And we had a DigiDesign 001.
Classic.
Yeah. A pair of NS10s or whatever it was, and a power amp, like an old Samsung power amp. We bought it all, and given, I think
was it Logic or
Pro Tools?
Yeah,
Pro Tools. And I think because the band had been in the States, Pro Tools is the thing in the studio, and it was like the guys who'd been in the band before me, they were like really into all that, and by Dan was always really on top of computer stuff, always on top of it, and so he was kind of leading the charge with that. And just because of my nature, I think I was like, well, I'll help out too. I wasn't at that point. It just was like, well, we built a studio space for ourselves. We built ourselves a rehearsal/recording studio underneath the boxing club in Newport, in St. Joseph's Amateur Boxing Club, in the heart of Hill, which is one of the gnarliest situations I've ever known in my life. It was very real.
Yeah.
We basically rented a space underneath the boxing gym. And you could hear when they were on the treadmills upstairs or sparring. It's basically all this comes through the ceiling,
Brilliant.
all of it. And the place is filled with all types of characters, like gnarly characters, really gnarly. Lots of amazing fighters went through that place as well, like young up and coming boxers and stuff.
I'm kind of envisaging like a Guy Ritchie movie, but in Newport.
Yeah. It's really it was amazing. Really, it was pretty intimidating. I'll be honest. I was like, 20 years old, and I'm walking down into the basement of this boxing studio, which is like There's a sauna in there. You have to walk through the changing room to get to our little space, which is probably about not too about the same sort of size as this place. You know, we put a wall in so you could have a control room and a live room. And we built this space, and we called it the Crimson Doom Room. And that's where we had our rig, and it was a Mac and a DigiDesign, which became Avid. Yeah, obviously. So it was a Pro Tools rig, and immediately I was like, well, I'll do some engineering because it can't just be Dan doing all this. It's just not fair, I need to help out in whatever way I can. I helped build the room, I helped build the walls, I just got stuck in, because it's just my nature.
Yeah, right.
And my job beforehand that I'd had before I joined the band, I was a graphic designer for a company, and I got the job. I was like 18 or something. I got the job, and they were like, do you know how to use Photoshop and Dreamweaver and all this? I'm like, yeah. I didn't have a fucking clue how to use any of these things because I couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford software. And I just used all that before, no problem. And I spent the first 8 months of my job like looking over the guy next to me going, remind me, how do you make a new file on this? And I honestly, I don't know how I didn't get fired because I just was blagging hard.
Winging it.
Yeah, but I think the thing is like I had no idea how to use any of this software, but I was just like, I'll just figure it out. I'll get stuck in.
Yeah, and that's how you do it.
Exactly. No one's born with this knowledge. No. You go, well, how hard can it be?
Yeah. It's designed to be intuitive.
Right. And I got, I'm in the chair and I'm just learning the shortcuts and figuring out how to route things and do all that. And before you know it, I'm engineering.
Yeah.
And we're demoing and it sounds awful, but it's amazing,
So once you started obviously doing that regularly, you sort of mastered the art. And now I know that you have your own Pro Tools rig that you work on quite regularly. Would you say that's contributed to your songwriting? Did you see that as another tool? I've asked everybody this because some people have a love-hate relationship with it. They will just purely see it as a service and as something that a means to an end, whereas other people, there is that debate of whether it's an extension of the creative tool for the songwriter. So we kind of what camp would you say that you've ended up falling in with regards to having the engineering skill and being the songwriter?
I guess I could kind of straddle both arguments where I don't really I don't obsess over the door. I'm like, I believe, like, Hans Zimmer says, the best door is the one you know best.
Yeah.
And I've never really delved deep into any others. I had Logic for 5 minutes. Again, it didn't come to me quick enough and I just moved on. Mm-hmm. I know that, like, Dan moved on to using Ableton, for example, and he swears by that. And I couldn't tell you how to use Ableton. I just never had the FaceTime with it. When you have time to learn stuff, you actually don't have time and you've got other projects that you're working on. It's like, it's quicker for me to do this in the program I know. I
had a go at Ableton and it did loads of things that other things couldn't do, and I quite liked that idea. That's why I went into it. Yeah. But then when I started using it, it just didn't feel natural to me.
Right. It does so much stuff that I think is incredible in the box as well. Not plugins you have to buy. But
no.
I follow this guy on Instagram called Moore's Beats, who's amazing, and he just gives tips and tricks of like production trips, but he works exclusively in Ableton, and I'm like, this doesn't apply to any other DAW, and so I can't copy what you're doing here. And it takes something really stock sounding and makes it sound like a record in like 10 clicks. Yeah, and it's like that's it. That's brilliant. Yeah, but Pro Tools doesn't really do that. For me, Pro Tools is more like MS Word or something. Where it's like, but it's all I know, and you have to bring other stuff into it a lot of the time to like juice it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But on the one hand, I see it as a tool and just it's a means to an end. But at the same time, it's got the capability to turn an average humdrum, not exciting idea into an exciting idea. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that can be said for any DAW, I suppose, but it's just the one I know. Yeah. I don't have any allegiance to it necessarily. It's just that's the one I learned because that's what the band had, and I just stuck with it. I pay for a subscription. I've probably paid for the software 100 times over. Yeah. But it's what I know. And in environments when you're working with other people, you haven't got time to go, let me just figure out how to do X, Y, Z. You have to know, and you just got to be able to move quickly. Yeah. And so I stick with stuff that I know, and I can get by with it. I'm not like a Pro Tools expert.
What is your rig?
So I use a MacBook Pro, and I have Pro Tools. I use Universal Audio Apollo as a sort of portable interface. I have like a satellite with that as well, so I can just bung loads of plugins on stuff.
You need to have a rig that's fully movable all the time. Don't you really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently working on having a setup at home because I'm in the process of renovating a house, which is full on. But I've got a space dedicated for work, which I cannot wait to get stuck into. But it's a long way off at the moment. But
will that when you've built your own little studio and your room, as it were, will the core of it be still part of the portable rig?
100%.
Yeah, you'll still keep the portable option very much there.
Yeah, it'd just be a case of I've always pretty much worked off a laptop.
Yeah,
just the nature of my life has been very transient over the past 20 years. I don't think I've ever owned a desktop computer ever. It's always been a laptop. And so you just need to be able to bring something with you that does the trick. I've had a few interfaces. I've got a little USB Zoom interface, which is bus powered, and it's brilliant because it's 2 in and 2 out, but it requires no power supply or nothing. It just works.
That's handy.
And that's really handy for just throwing, it's one cable, one thing, and it's just, for like if you're recording something quick on that, I've used that in the past. But the Apollo stuff, the UAD stuff is brilliant because it just sounds so good. All the plugins are amazing. I guess if I'm geeky about or fanboy about any brand, I'm quite keen on the.
Do you stick with a brand? If there's a plugin brand that you like, that's who you'll stay with. I
guess so. I'm a bit of a fanboy about the Universal Audio stuff, but I have all kinds of other things as well because you have to, you know. I've kind of come around to the idea that the answer doesn't lie in some secret Weapon X plugin. I kind of like the idea of making the stuff you got, like really properly learning it and making it work, because a lot of the stuff in Pro Tools is good enough, like a lot of the stock plugins are a lot of them are just killer if you're using them properly.
There was a time Andrew Wells was working here at Vada, and he was working with Tom Grennan, and he didn't use anything other than the stock Pro Tools,
and I bet it sounded brilliant.
It was mind-boggling how good it sounded.
Right.
I mean, he's obviously an exceptional talent, but I mean, it made me rethink a little bit, because sometimes you can go like, oh well, I need to go in my special plugins folder because this is important, and I can only make it sound good with this sort of stuff. I mean, at the moment, my current binge is all the Valhalla stuff.
Yeah.
So
it's great because it's affordable. It sounds brilliant.
It's amazing, and it's really malleable. You can really make it your own.
A lot of control. What I like about that stuff as well, I know that when something's popular like that, a person like myself who moves around a lot, is you want something when everywhere else has it, you have to have it.
Yeah.
So if you're the toolkit that a place's rig has to have, you just have to have it too. So when you're working with sessions away from that place, you're not like, man, what was it that they had? You have to have sound toys. You have to have Valhalla. You have to have like a handful of stuff that people have. I'm not like a massive have to have everything. I've got a small toolkit of stuff that I swear by, and occasionally I stumble on something that someone shows me and I'm like, oh, that's exciting. But I still find that like the sound toy stuff does so much.
Yeah.
Decapitator on everything, Devil Lock on drums. I mean, I put Alter Boy on everything.
Yeah.
It's so good. And it's old as anything. It's not a new thing. It just sounds so good.
It does. It still sounds so good.
Yeah.
So, do you have a sort of a pattern to your working environment in terms of, do you have like the perfect method, environment, workflow, or do you change it up all the time? Do you work to any form of template? And asking that into two areas here, if there is a template, does it cover life in Skindred? And does that then also, the same template, cover life as a producer writer when you're in the studio working with other artists? So is there a divide between the hat when you're even though you're writing and you're working in the studio with Skindred, and ideas are floating around the room, which are obviously production ideas. So you are still going through the same process, but is there a difference between that and then when you're working away from Skindred, are there two templates or one template or no template? Is every time you go in the studio completely different for you?
I think it's more different than not. I mean, I'm still relatively new to being in the seat and being
the hot seat. It's your fault if it fucks up.
I'm still new to that. Like, it's the new thing for me. I've only been in that position for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of, on reflection, I think that in Skindred we're all kind of producers in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like, I never really thought about it. Like, someone said that. Well, in Skindred you're all producing. Look at you. Look at the way you go. And it's like, shit, I suppose so. So to answer your question about is it the same? Absolutely not. My mindset, role, approach in Skindred is very different because there's 4 of us and we're all so active. We're all so involved. No one in that band is like taking a back seat and letting someone out. Like, everyone's up in each other's shit and everyone's like, what are you doing there? You could do better. This could be different. That sounds amazing. Do that again. Blah, blah, blah. Like, we're all on the engineer's case, on the producer's case. We all care. We're all involved. We're all like trying to, manipulate this thing into being the best thing we can do. And we're all in there. Like, it's a real team effort, but that creates all kinds of conflict and friction as well. And managing that, there's no way on this earth I could be in charge at Skindred. It would be like, it just would be too much.
No one person could.
No, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. It's like we take it in turns, and that creates friction, and it's a really hands-on, intense working environment. People have come in and got burnt out and can't work with us anymore because it's like, these guys are crazy. They're like, it's full on. Yeah. It's a real full on thing, I think. And it's only from working with other artists that I know that now. I just thought that's the way it is.
Right.
But I've been in the room with so many people now. It's like, wow, those 2 don't get involved with any of that. They just play their bit and then they sit and let these other 2 hash it out.
Interestingly,
and it's weird.
Interestingly, obviously, we did a record together with the King Sugar thing, which is you and Aria.
Yeah.
Which is something that the world has yet to see. Obviously, you've been busy with that other band called Skindred.
Yeah, and other things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's working with Aria still. Even that dynamic was different.
Completely different.
And
I think it's because there's more responsibility. I'm covering a lot of bases in that band, doing a lot more, and there's a lot more responsibility. Like, the buck stops with me a bit more, I guess.
Yeah.
I think with Skindred, if anything else, I can almost afford to be a bit more, allow things to, like, take my hands off the wheel.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Because there's 4 pairs of hands on the wheel.
4 pairs of hands on 4 wheels, all controlling the same vehicle. It's insanity. And sometimes you have to just go, this isn't a me situation to control. This is like, I'll let the room sort this out. Trust the studio and the space and the person in charge and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes it's like, I've got an idea here. I know it's good. And I know it will be great for us if you just shut the fuck up and let me do it and don't try and fuck it up.
Yeah.
And that's really hard because who wants to be that person? I don't.
Yeah.
I hate being that person. But sometimes it has to be like that because you've got 6 people in a room finger blasting your idea to oblivion for the worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes things are better for the collaboration.
Yeah.
Sometimes things can go down the pan for it, and it's really hard to know which way it's going to go. So I have to trust my intuition with that stuff, and I don't fight every battle because it's not worth it. And that some things are like just best to figure out as a team. Some things are worth fighting for and being like, no, I'm really right about this, and you need to hear that out and respect it.
Yeah.
And that's in itself is a skill, knowing which ones to leave and which ones to really push for.
Very much so. And I think especially in the studio environment, when being the producer, you're controlling the room. I mean, the buck does stop with you. And
you don't get to say things like "shut the fuck up."
No.
I don't say that in Skindred. I don't. I've given it the big in here. I don't talk like that.
I don't think you'd say that to anybody, to be honest. You're far too polite and constructive.
Things would have to get really bad for it to be like that, I think.
Yeah.
Really bad.
But it's
you have to be more professional in the seat.
Yeah, and you have to mediate, it's as you say, I mean, you say it's a unique thing to Skindred. I mean, there is a lot of intensity there, and that's an energy, but there's a huge amount of energy in that band, full stop. But making a record, it does fall within that characteristic of it's one of the most intense moments of a band's sort of life, I think,
Yeah,
in the making records.
You're subject to huge scrutiny in the moment in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You're under massive pressure to get it right, make it better than the last time. Don't get it wrong. Don't piss anybody off. Don't, leave a mark, but do it respectfully but do it well. There's all kinds of like interpersonal pressure, wider pressure for, your audience and what you're trying to do.
I still get really nervous before every record I make, like gig nerves.
I have to I've the older I get, I just have to have faith. I've learned to lean into like trust and faith of stuff, knowing that things will just pan out and be okay, because it always has. I go into things with a lot of anxiety sometimes of not having the answer, because I think something you asked me, was about the process of going in, and to be honest, I think that something I've really learned to hang on to is not be thoroughly prepared and only have a certain amount of prep and leave a certain amount to chance that happens in the studio environment, and knowing that that's going to take care of business. It's going to be okay.
Can you feel confident in that regardless of the artist that you would be working with?
So far. Yeah, I haven't had anything where I was like, I was wrong.
Yeah, right.
It all fell to pieces. I couldn't get it over the line.
Yeah.
So far, so good. But the challenge is getting other people to have that faith, because I've gone, it'll be okay, we'll suss it out in the time. We will get it together. The answer will come.
I think you say that, you talk from the we, but what's quite funny is that I think that belief is coming from you, because you know that you'll probably,
it's not knowing, it's having faith, and that's the difference.
Yeah,
because I don't know what the answer is. We're in the process of writing a new record. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I have to have faith that it's going to come together. I don't know. I can't tell you what the next riff I'm going to create is going to be, but I have to believe that it will come.
Yeah.
When I least force it, and it just happens. It sounds really like weird and Jedi. I'm not trying to be. I'm really promise. I'm not trying to be like, I just feel. The stuff.
I get it.
I honestly,
I think you're being honest. It's great.
I'm being totally honest. The best ideas I have happen nowhere near a computer or near a guitar or I'm away from it. I'm in the car driving. I'm in the shower. I'm brushing my teeth before a session, and it's like, man, I really, my physical body is preoccupied with some mundane activity, and all of a sudden, that creative part of my mind fills the blank. And that happens. I swear to God, that happens all the time. And it's like, I have to have faith that that's going to continue to happen.
Yeah,
it's weird. I don't get great ideas sat at a computer with a guitar. So I play the same stuff over and over again. My hands go to the same place. I play the same things.
Yeah.
The best things that are like, wow, that was fucking proper, happen when I am removed from that stuff. Or, you're in the writing mode and you're together and you're doing stuff, but you withdraw from the theatre and you take yourself out of it, and these things just happen.
So Boom, there's an example. That was written like that.
Give me that Boom. Yeah, 100%. I didn't have a guitar in my hands. I just had an idea in my head.
Where were you?
I was probably in the shower.
Amazing.
I was in the shower, and it just came to me. And I know that sounds really like, oh, well, good for you, but it did. And I have to have faith that stuff continues to happen.
So did you, when you get these moments, like at that moment when you wrote the riff for Boom and you got that going, did you then jump out of the shower and run to Pro Tools and get it down?
I put it in my phone. I always hum stuff in my phone. Most of the time. Sometimes I forget to, and I go, oh, I'll do this later, and then it's gone. If it's not gone, then chances are I know it's a good idea and it's got legs.
How long did it take for you to demo it then?
I put it together roughly on just, and I think we were here actually in the residential. I just put it together quickly and programmed a quick drum beat. It was more than anything, it was like just having the chorus idea, the vocal idea and that kind of thing. And just wanted to capture that and just present it in a way that's like, this could be cool if we try it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it went on to be very...
Yeah, it's done well. One of our last singles done really well. But that stuff, even with other artists, is just, once you get to know them, once you get to know other artists and how they work and what they're inspired by, once you get into their, sort of shapeshift into their world a bit, you kind of start thinking... what would be good for that artist, and that's when those ideas come as well. And often you know, if I'm working with somebody and they've sent me some demos, I'll absorb it. And then I won't obsess over it, and I won't like sit at the computer going, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" I just literally in the days coming up to the session, I'll find that like an idea will come, you know, and it'll be when I'm driving around and just thinking about it. I have been thinking about it. It's just back there somewhere.
Yeah. Just processing slowly.
An idea will come, and it might be good, it might be rubbish, but I will have some ideas, and I'll have something to throw around. As a writer, you know, sometimes you work with people and they got all their ideas sussed, and it's just about making them as good as they can be, and that's a different process altogether. But for Skindred, I'll sort of walk the line of like being a guitar player and sort of being a songwriter and trying to find the groove, because I respect everybody involved and I don't want to tread on anyone's toes. But at the same time, I know a good idea when I hear one. For us especially, I've been doing it 20 years, you know, I know what works for us.
Yeah.
And I know what could be great, and I want to fight for those ideas. And I want to do that with other artists too. I want to say, this is a great idea for you. You got to give it a chance. We've got to see it through to its final, its ultimate form.
How many records have you done with Skindred?
I think like 8 now.
8.
I think this was the 8th one. Yeah.
That's a fair few albums to have made over the years.
Yeah.
So,
and everyone is very different.
The one question I have to ask everybody: the best and their worst studio experience. And over 8 records, there must have been a lot of experiences.
I've had a lot of difficult, tough studio situations. I think the toughest one, I don't want to name any names. I don't want to like throw shade on anyone, but we worked with one producer who their approach was to make you track and track and track and track and track and track. You know, his guitars, like literally 30, 40 takes of rhythm parts, and then having to double it. And it's like, just can you just play it over and over and over and over again? And I just thought, what is this?
It's almost sadistic.
Yeah, felt it. And it was like, I don't feel like it's getting any better. And, you know, I've done stuff since where you do it in a few takes, and it's not that I've developed as a guitarist. It's just that person that in the chair is like, yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why does it need to be over and over and over and over and over again? Like, it's just just running the clock out. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy that, like, do it again. I just think, I don't know, that's not for me. I think, like, we've got it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Having the confidence to say, yeah, we got it is a big thing, I think.
So how long were you being made to literally
Weeks.
Weeks.
Well, the album went on for weeks, and it was everyone had that. And I don't know, it seemed like that was their process. Like, I'm going to make you play this so many times that you know it backwards. Like, almost like in a kind of like Mr. Miyagi way. Like, wax on, wax off. My hands are bleeding. Keep, you know.
This is good for you.
Yeah, this is good for you. This is like character building. I was like, I don't know. I haven't taken that on and been like, this is the way. Not at all. I'm like, forget that. You know, I like to think that I've got it. Like, it's there.
You took nothing from that whatsoever.
That's not, I don't know. I just don't see the point. I don't know. Maybe it works for some people, but I just think time's so precious, you know?
Yeah.
Why would you want to spend all this time just doing something over and over and over again when you just end up using one of them? Surely one of the first 6 were okay. No. Yeah, well, I don't know. That was tough. Had things like stuff on the fly where, you know, like recording brass. Like, we had these brass session musicians in. It was on the King Sugar thing.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we'd spent a lot of money on getting these brass players in the right place. And Pro Tools is, I'd arranged all these brass parts meticulously, and I was, you know, really fired up about it. Pro Tools is supposed to just spit all this MIDI out as, like, you know, dotted stave stuff, and it didn't, and it wasn't doing it. And it was like, you have the guys in, you haven't got the music for them to read. It's printing out blank stuff, and it's like, oh my god. And then, you know, thankfully George Perks, the engineer, came to the rescue and figured it out and got
managed
it all working.
to make it work.
And I think that, to me, like, that's the most important thing in a working environment, is just the people. Like, I think if you have good, when I walk into a situation and it's you know, if I've got good players, there's good players, and by good players I don't mean like, oh, they're virtuosos. I just mean people who hit it right or know what not to put on the plate.
Yeah.
People who play the right thing and play it well. If you've got that and you've got a great engineer, that's where I'm like, we will suss this out.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost, you know, I tend to fall into the trap of trying to fix all problems sometimes and be like, I've got this responsibility to do. But reality is, when you have other personnel in the situation who have that certain bases covered all day long, man, just I will talk about songs, make songs better. But like when you got someone handling things sounding amazing sonically, and I love that. I love working with a great engineer, which is a luxury, you know, real luxury. So I've worked with so many engineers who are like, they know the gear, they can tell you all about the gear. If you get them talking, that's what they want to talk about, is the serial number of the compressor and why it's good and who uses that and when it was. And it's like, this means nothing to me. I know that stuff, I'm a gearhead and stuff is cool, but like,
You use your ears.
I want an engineer who's fired up about music.
Yeah.
Not necessarily fired up about gear. Because, and I don't think there's anything worse than an engineer who's like waiting to be told, go forth and make this sound good. Like, you know, you want somebody who's like finishing your sentences for you and just has an understanding of the vision of what you're trying to achieve and are up doing it without you having to say.
Yeah.
You know, and that is amazing, having that situation. You know, I've been so lucky to work with a couple of engineers like that in my time. People who understand what it is you're trying to do and they know how to do it already, like, or are open to just trying weird stuff that makes something even more magic happen. You know, when we did Big Things at Real World, we had an engineer called Lee Slater who was brought in, who the producer brought in, and he was like that, you know, just didn't ask permission to like plug something else in to make it sound messed up. He was just doing it because he was like, this would be a vibe, I just know it. And it was. That stuff is brilliant. It's magic, you know. And I think as a producer sometimes I feel like the responsibility to be doing all that as well, and that because I'm not like the best engineer, it's a bit of a mystery to me, some of that stuff. I know how to get stuff up and running and make it sound cool and inspiring, but it's the next level of like, this sounds amazing. This sounds incredible. You've just made this for me. Working with people like that is. And
would you say that that's been some of your like highlights, the best moments of in the studio was when
100%, yeah.
And then that's the thing that will make the magic happen.
Yeah, and having good players, you know, people who just effortlessly make something sound spot on for the thing that you need, and it's like inspiring. It makes you feel something. You know, that's what you want from people at the end of the day, you know. And again, it's not like, oh, they have to be the be all end all and massively technical. That's not what it's about. It's about having a synergy with people and them getting the vision of whatever it is you're trying to do and knowing how to do that effectively.
Yeah.
You know, I love working with people like that.
Yeah.
You know, in all shapes and sizes. And, you know, being inspired by people. I've been very lucky to be in a room with really inspiring people. We did some writing with a guy called Russ Ballard about 10 years ago. He's a big songwriter, you know, did the God Gave Rock and Roll to You Kiss song, and, you know, Since You've Been Gone, you know, he's written some big, like 70s.
Some pretty big hits.
Yeah, he's had loads of big hits, songs that people know, you know. And one of the things he said that really stuck with me was, when, you know, he came into a Skindred writing situation, and Skindred's intense, you know. And he said, there's too much information here. What you're trying to do here, there's too much information. And that has stuck with me. Like, such insight. Like, do less. Because I think it's maybe some maturity thing. I don't know. Like, when you start off, you're kind of, I've got to fill this space. I've got to fill this up. I've got to build this up, fill this up. And being able to make something sound better with less is like, wow, it's so powerful, you know.
Yeah. less is more. It's a well-known phrase, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but it's so easy to overlook and forget and think you've got to do more here and patch this and color that and da-da-da. But sometimes it's like the best things are just so like simplify it, do less.
Yeah.
Too much information, and just that is something which really stuck with me. Like amazing.
I think it is. I think in this whole business, the music industry, and the whole time that I've been in it, which is nearly 30 years now, which is scary. The best parts for me are always when I come away with something quite major that I've learned, and it's always from somebody else. And,
Every time.
and that learning is obviously an inspiration. It still happens now. I can, it's not, well, you get to a point in your career where you kind of have seen enough and you've done enough to no longer ever feel that, because it takes so many different shapes. And I think, and I like that answer, because I think
if you ever get to that, you've failed.
Yeah, massively.
The day you go, oh no, I've got this, is like, no, I'm always learning, all the time.
Yeah,
from other people.
There's not enough life to learn everything that we want to learn.
No.
Well, Mikey, it's been amazing having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
And I really hope that your career continues to go on this incredible trajectory.
Thank you very much. I hope so too.
Yeah.